WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Communications Channel 16 proudly present the We Should Know Show, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative. Celebrating 15 years of bringing you the We Should Know Show, here's your host, J.W. Simmons.
Welcome back. We Should Know's on there. J.W. Simmons here, your host. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're coming to you on Star Communications TV, Channel 16, simulcast on WCLN Radio. Our guest today is Ashlyn Milligan. Ashlyn, your name is pretty much known in the area. You went to Clinton High School. At Clinton High School, I understand you were quite the athlete. And now you are a graduated and you have a doctorate, a Juris Doctorate in law. Let's just talk for a minute about your history here in Clinton and your history at Clinton High School. It's kind of unusual. We see folks go off to school and get the kind of degree you have and decide to come back to this landscape. Help us understand why you're here now and you've just opened up a new office in downtown Clinton.
Yes, so I grew up in Clinton and my family's here. All of my friends, my family, they're all in Clinton, and I attended Clinton High School, graduated from Clinton High School. I was able to make a lot of meaningful connections throughout my time here. And I played basketball and soccer, like you were saying. I actually won a state championship in basketball. Go Dark Horses. I went to law school in Raleigh, but before that, I was at UNCW in Wilmington, and I would always visit home and found myself missing home and my family. So I'd come back a lot in undergrad. I went to Raleigh, and I also found myself coming back home and coming to see my family and talking to people that had formed those connections with here. And ultimately, I just wanted to come and give back to the community that raised me and made me the person that I am. I have a lot of memories in Clinton and with a lot of people here. So I decided to come back and give back to my community in any way that I could. And that happens to be through legal services.
You know, Ashlyn, one of the things that strikes me too is that with all of the dynamics of academics you have gone through, there was some point in time in your journey, that triggered you to say law. That's for me, because you're talking a huge career move. I mean, that's a dedication, huge part of your life you've dedicated. Now, granted, you just, newly opened an office here, but the reality is that something that triggered that? Is that something that you kind of eased into and you felt comfortable? Why this career?
Yeah, so I get that question a lot, and I had to go back and pinpoint the moment. But I would say when I was an undergrad at UNCW, I did an internship with the district attorney's office. Ben David was the elected district attorney at the time, and he was amazing. I enjoyed that office a lot, and they kind of pushed me towards becoming an attorney. But even when I started, I wasn't sure. But when I was able to see what they did for people and what they were doing for the community and how they wanted to give back, I kind of found that in myself and decided that that was the step I wanted to take. And I knew it would be a long journey, and it definitely was, but I'm glad that I'm here and able to do the same that I've seen many of my mentors do in giving back to their community.
When I look at law and I look at different attorneys, for the folks listening and watching to the show here today, I think one of the things we all probably recognize, we kind of see attorneys pretty much as a general thing, but most attorneys have specialty practices. You get a traffic ticket, you go to this attorney. If you're indicted with a criminal charge, you go to this one. If you're having some trouble with dividing some land up, you go to somebody else. You've kind of got in that genre of family law. What attracted you to family law?
Again, that's a question I get asked all the time, and I always have to think about it. It was definitely in law school. I had a professor named Richard Wagaman, and he made a great impact in my life. And I tell many he kept me pushing throughout law school, and he was a family law professor. I believe he's one of the deans there now, and he runs a clinic, and he represents individuals who have lower income and can't afford an attorney. And I worked at that clinic, and he really instilled in me the value of helping people and how fulfilling it can be. And he had a great impact on my life. And he was a family law attorney for many years now. And I kind of went down that road and learned a lot of what I know today because of him. And he taught me pretty much everything about family law. So,
well, family law is, somebody looking probably that's not familiar with the judicial system, is a huge chunk of law. I was reading one article that talked about the increase in demand for family law attorneys had increased something like 400% over the past few years. And I'm thinking, that's unbelievable. But that's a large genre of different kind of skill sets that you have to look at. Let's talk about some of the things that is kind of inclusive in that family law area.
Yeah, so family law is definitely the broad description, but it includes things such as divorce, equitable distribution, which is kind of your property distribution and things you've collected during the marriage, alimony and spousal support, where one spouse may be required to pay the other spouse, and then child support, child custody. Those things are all included within family law, and it can even branch out to things such as domestic violence and all of those things.
When I look at it and I think about some of the things you just mentioned, I have folks on the show, some folks that deal with children and child behavior and those kinds of things on a regular basis. One particular show I do almost every year is Falcon's Children Home. And I think about those kids. They ended up there. How did they end up there? And there's statutory issues surrounding that. And it's like we're losing a big part of our societal structure, if you will, because it seems like on that visceral level, it's kind of breaking apart. As an attorney, what do you feel like your role is in trying to help keep that glue together?
Yeah, so I actually did an internship with the Child's Advocate in Raleigh. It was with Legal Aid. Mm-hmm. And their main focus is what the child wants. And they represent the children in these proceedings. Mm-hmm. I think it's super important to remember when it comes to custody proceedings that the child should be at the forefront of everyone's minds. We should be doing what's in the child's best interest, which is also the legal standard for those proceedings. And I do believe that our judges adhere to that, and they're very good about dictating what's in the child's best interest. I think it's important for people to remember that it is about the child. It's not about how much you dislike your ex or something like that. It's really just about keeping the child at the forefront of your mind and doing what's in their best interest. At the end of the day,
I think also is kind of interesting to me because oftentimes folks see family law as a structured piece, as paperwork. You sign this document, you sign that document, that's it. But you're probably, if you look at it realistically, family law, at least in my observation from the outside looking in, is probably one of the most volatile pieces of law for the emotional challenge part. And I know you've just kind of got into it. We were talking earlier about your first case and that kind of thing, but you've seen it in learning to do what you're doing. The emotional piece, it gets really dangerous at times.
It does get dangerous. And I think one of my jobs as a family law attorney is to kind of hear them out and let them know that I'm someone that they can talk to about these things, but also I represent them. It does get emotional, and I understand that people's emotions are high, and that's something that comes with the job. I think sometimes people take out their emotions on their attorney, and it kind of just comes with the job. And being empathetic and understanding in those situations is really important in family law. And it's something that maybe other practice areas don't really have to worry about as much, I would say, is the emotional aspect. Some of it is overly emotional, and people do sometimes dump those feelings, and that's okay. It's my job to be empathetic and to understand and to see where they're coming from and to advocate for them the best that I can.
That part of it, being an advocate for that person, when somebody comes in, you really don't know what you're getting into until you start unfolding those pages piece by piece. Do you ever get the feeling that there may be that time that you might have to look at someone and say, I'm not sure you might need to go somewhere else? Or do you just accept that as a challenge and say, I'll represent you based on what I've been dealt to deal with?
Yeah, so when it comes to family law, I think being transparent is the first thing. If clients come to me and they may not have a good case, being transparent about what is likely to happen in court is always something that I like to communicate to the client to not get the hopes too high. I don't believe if I had bad facts on my side, it would be a reason for me to send someone somewhere else. The law is the law, and we can work within the confines of the law. And you have a constitutional right to your children. So we could find a way to make it work. And I would advocate for anyone, regardless of good facts, bad facts. I think everyone deserves their day in court, especially when it comes to something like your constitutional right to your children.
It bothers not only me, but a lot of folks. They'll see some of these stories on news media where children have been left or they've been basically sold out to be, marketed and all those kind of horrific things. From an attorney's point of view, that's got to hurt even more because I look at you and think, you're probably thinking, how do I get in there and stop this? How do I get somebody's attention and be part of the solution rather than just seeing the news media as a hyperbole?
Yeah, I think advocating for the rights of children, the rights of parents. And when you see those things, it's obviously horrible to see, but there's ways for us to advocate for those children and for their rights. And we do have some great programs in Sampson County that also deal with those things that I think do a great job, and hopefully they can continue to advocate for those kids.
The family law practitioner like yourself, there's so many different things going on, and there's so many I would say maybe common mistakes folks make and go, well, we're going to do this, or we're going to sit down as a family, quoted, and take care of the disposition of this property. How would you encourage people to say, yeah, that's great, but you might want to include legal counsel in that?
I think that people have a lot of rights to things and that they don't know about without consulting with an attorney. I know ChatGPT and Google can tell you a couple of things, but having someone in person, an attorney who knows your rights and can convey those to you and advocate for them is invaluable. And I know people may think that the internet can help them get there, but a lot of times consulting with an attorney is going to give you your best opportunity to get what you're obligated to legally.
Well, I think you hit on a subject I wanted to get to, so I'm going to kind of go out on the break on this. We'll come back and we'll talk about it, and that's the whole world of AI. How has it challenged you as an attorney? How do you think it is dealing with larger society in some of this misinformation? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Cork and Brew Roseboro, where you can enjoy your favorite coffee, fraps, smoothies, bakery items, sandwiches, and select beer and wines while reconnecting with friends and family. Sit down and enjoy the experience. Come on by and give us a try.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. If you're just tuning in, I want to let you know this is Star Communications TV, Channel 16, WCLN Radio simulcast. We're talking with Ashlyn Milligan, new attorney in the landscape of Clinton, grew up here, been involved in a lot of activities, sports and otherwise. I was reading a lot of stuff about you and looking a little bit of your background. You're a pet lover. You have two close friends, I think. Well, one of them's a cat, and one of them's a dog.
Yeah.
And the reason I mentioned that is that it's been my observation that we're now in a world that if you have an animal and you love animals, you're an okay person.
Yeah.
Do you feel that in society?
I do. I agree with that. If you like dogs or cats, you're all right with it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you do, and how many or what? But it's that reasoning the reason I brought that up. But when I look at your background and what you were exposed to here in your trajectory, ended up being a law degree from Campbell University, and all of those kinds of things hits the plate. And now you're on this landscape, and you're at 112 Lisbon Street. And so people can stop in, they can call you. We're going to post that on the screen for you. They can call you, but you are also part of that business community as a small business. And sometimes I usually check the block yes when I ask this question, but you are a small business in the sense that you provide a service, not necessarily you don't sell cups or coffee, but you sell a service. Do you see that as a small business too?
I do. I think legal services are definitely a service that you can sell to people. I've always heard the saying that you always know someone that needs an attorney. And I think that's something that's kind of stuck with me. And I believe it is a small business, and the small business community around here has been great in helping me advertise and promote. And I'm happy to be back.
And I think the part of that for me is that knowing a number of attorneys here, as you know of a lot of attorneys here, and looking at the historical progress of a lot of attorneys, is based on that credibility issue. That one thing, if you start out now, you're coming out that door the first time, but you start and all of a sudden you start building that credibility mark. And so people start saying, well, why don't you go see Ashlyn? Don't hesitate. She's right over here. Before you get into this, maybe go see her. How do you see yourself now at this opening up your business, marketing yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I think being the new attorney in town has been a little bit of marketing. I've heard a lot of people say, hey, I heard you were new and I need some help with this. And I think that's been good. Word of mouth is huge, especially in small towns. You help one person and they tell 4 more about you. Absolutely. And I think that has helped me a lot. And the attorneys here have also been super helpful. The Sampson County Bar they're great people, everyone in it. Some of them have referred clients to me and I've referred them to them. And I think that really helps. But mostly it's word of mouth and people telling other people about you. And then they go and tell someone else, and that brings some business in the door.
Is an attorney part of the solution landscape? Are they part of the intervention landscape? What is an attorney's role when we look at, sometimes if you look at media too much, you end up being a little bit psychic, but it's like, what is going on? But how do you see your role as being part of that landscape that says, calm down, sit down, let's discuss it?
Definitely by finding solutions, fixing these issues that people may have. People come to attorneys in some of the hardest times of their lives, and being able to help them and give them a little reassurance that everything will be okay. We just need to get through this, and I'm here to help you get through this, is something that I really pride myself on. People come to me and they're distraught. I mean, it is the hardest time in a lot of people's lives, and they need help. They need someone that they can lean on. And I really like being that person for them and just telling them that this can be resolved. Just stick with me and I'll be here for you and we can get through this. I think just finding solutions to those problems and finding a way out and giving them, a little bit of hope at the end of the tunnel is.
Does family law encompass the area of estate planning and those kinds of things? It
does not. It's sort of a separate area, but I do deal with some power of attorneys and wills and stuff like that. It can encompass that, but that is a separate area.
When I think about that, I think about the change that's going on in society, and even in the housing industry now. And folks are, I was looking at, and I was hoping to get maybe Ernie Lee in to have this discussion. But we're looking at folks getting duped, and they're living in a house, and all of a sudden they discover they don't own the house anymore, and they, somebody has basically disenfranchised them by printing out a deed, by getting it certified, and now they're going, wait a minute, I've got $200,000 mortgaged on my home, and it's, what am I going to do? Is that the kind of thing that would be in your wheelhouse, or is that more for legal, for criminal law?
That is probably for an estate attorney and people who do more of that work. Yeah. I would likely refer them out to someone else.
Does that trouble you when you see those cases, though, because there's a number of them out there?
It does, especially I think now there's online services that can provide you with legal documents you can do yourself. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that they're the most reliable, and you definitely need an in-person human checking over your legal filings, because there are so many requirements for things that a lot of people just don't know about, and a simple Google search won't bring it up for you.
So when somebody calls your office, do you have a set workload of folks that you feel comfortable having at the same? For example, if you get 12 people to call and they say, we got a case coming up 3 weeks from now, how do you work that in the schedule? And I'm asking this question simply because if folks are listening, they say, well, I've got something coming up, I think I'll call her. What should their expectation be to get the services you deliver?
So right now, I don't have a huge caseload, and an attorney's favorite answer to everything is it depends. A lot of times it depends. If I have a couple of people who just want a power of attorney, I can take on something more strenuous and some litigation cases. As long as it works with my schedule and I'm not overworked, then I'm willing to take on stuff like that if people call in. I would say as of right now, I'm open to taking on those cases. And we would initially have a consult and kind of see where things are at. Because I'm not the type of attorney that would tell someone like, you need me and you need to pay me, you need an attorney, when they really don't. Yeah. I've had clients come in and they're like, can we do this without an attorney? And I'll tell them absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily recommend higher stakes things, but there are some things that you can do without an attorney, but there's some things that it's highly advisable not to do without an attorney. So I would bring them in for a consult and we would kind of sit down and discuss their options.
When you look at the local connectivity with attorneys in this area, do you feel comfortable that you have the adequate support you need from your peers? Do you feel like you need some apprentices, maybe in your office or working with folks a little bit closer to have a little bit of support? I know a number of law offices have 2 or 3 attorneys in it. And I know you're going in as the single person at your firm. Well, what's your sense on that?
The community is amazing. All of the other attorneys here have reached a hand out and offered to help in any way they can. Some of them have helped me with a couple of things. I've been going to lunch and kind of networking with all of the attorneys here. They've been amazing. I really couldn't ask for anything better. And I think that's the plus side of being in a small town and coming back to my hometown is I know some of these attorneys from when I was growing up, and also they're just tighter. Whenever I was in bigger counties, they didn't necessarily, all of the attorneys go out to lunch together and do things. So that's one positive for sure. And yeah, I've been super busy. I've had some people helping me, but I have an automated system that kind of helps with intake and all of that good stuff and scheduling. So I've been able to keep that, but yeah.
That's kind of, you just said the word that cued me up where I wanted to go. We're living in a world now of automation. We're living in a world now that expectations about with your cell phone becomes the dynamic of the day. We're also living in a world that folks don't particularly talk to people anymore. They either, as you say, do it automatically or automated, or they push a button and, you're talking to somebody, or even if you call, it may be your dentist office, it may be some medical office, you get Sarah, who is an AI, and she's going to take care of everything. Where's law headed in that whole dynamic that we can take our phones and say, what is my ability to get out of this that I'm involved in? And they punch it up and they will get a response. Now, I'm not against, let me make it clear, I'm not talking against AI here for calls. I don't want to get stopped on the street and go, what's the matter with you? But I think that technology is there. How do you blend with that and how do you deal with that competition? I
believe that technology supports attorneys more than anything. I don't ever think that AI will be able to take an attorney's spot. There are research platforms now that have incorporated AI. So the legal field is kind of evolving with AI. So we have legal research platforms that have AI and they kind of help us, but those are only really for attorneys and research purposes. I will say I've had clients come in and they're like, well, Google told me I could get this. It's kind of like, well, Google's wrong. You kind of need to know what the law is, read the statutes. Google can give you an answer, but it can't tell you necessarily the local procedure and how they do things in a certain county, which has also been an awakening for me here and working in 3 different counties now. The court systems and the clerks all do things a little bit differently. And so it's always an adjustment. And I know it's an adjustment for me. So if someone was trying to do that, they may not know how to without consulting an attorney. So I do think it's still important. And I think AI should be more of a support for people when they don't have an attorney or used to ask questions to an attorney. What can I ask my attorney about this? But in terms of asking AI to essentially represent you and draft legal documents for you, I think that is not advisable.
Well, I think the point you make is really where I was going with this, because, somebody comes in and they say, well, look, I was looking at AI or whatever, and this is not costing me anything. But, I'm thinking that by the time we get through my case, we're looking at 30, 40 hours, ever how many hours it is, and it could be $1,200 or $1,500. So I'm just going to go to court and I'm going to be a real polite person, and I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to take on this case myself. Think about that for a minute, because we're going to take a break when we come back, and I'll kind of get your response on that to help folks maybe process that a little bit better. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. We're talking with Ashlyn Milligan.
How can your friend save you money? It's easy. Refer a relative, coworker, neighbor, or friend to Star Communications. Friend signs up for high-speed internet service. Friend's new account is confirmed. Friend gives your name to our service representative as the one who referred them to Star. You receive a $30 internet credit. It's just that simple. And even better, receive a $30 internet credit for every referral that results in a new confirmed account. High-speed internet from Star Communications. Refer a friend today.
Providing less, you froze up. And more presence in your presentations. Providing a better internet experience. Providing possible.
If you run a business, you need sales. To get sales, you need customers. To get customers, you need exposure. Let our team of experts craft and produce the perfect video ad to reach your intended audience while making the most of your advertising dollars. Call 1-800-706-6538 or visit starcom.net to contact our Star Communications production team and get your business moving to the next level.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know's on there. My name is J.W. Simmons. I'm your host, Star Communications TV, Channel 16, WCLN Radio, simulcast. Look forward to seeing you each and every week. We're talking about legal issues today with the newest attorney in Clinton, Ashlyn Milligan. Counselor, thank you for being here today, and thank you for taking time to come to this little studio here and just have a conversation, a frank, open discussion about legal issues. Off air, we were talking, I want to pick up on this thread, we were talking about the importance of the judiciary in today's society. You don't have to wait very long if it's not already on the network. Turn your favorite network TV on and you're going to see everything from riots to people doing some really ridiculous things to heinous stuff going on. Do you feel, when you look at your profession, that your profession represents a judiciary that shows and is an example of the factual reality of yes and no?
I think that the law provides us with a lot of answers to those things, and I have faith in the judicial system to uphold the laws. And I think that attorneys have a duty to represent their clients and advocate for their clients' best interest whenever it comes to whether they were right or wrong. It's not something for an attorney to decide. It's something for the judge or even a jury to decide when it comes to that. And the law plays a key role in that and will be, deciphered by attorneys, by the judge. And even sometimes the jury gets to make decisions about whether someone did break the law or whether they did do something. They're like the trier of fact. But yeah, I think that attorneys need to advocate, or an attorney's job is to advocate for their clients, whether they think they're right or they're wrong. They're advocating for their best interest, and then go through the judicial process and let it work out.
There's so many different areas that I could go to and spring questions, but one of them is always fascinated me is the area called alienation of affection.
Yeah.
And when I look at that, I think alienation of what? And you did what? Is that something that is in North Carolina statute? I know it's still there, but is that something that's easily used as a catalyst to turn things around when you're dealing with domestic issues and somebody is doing this, so they get blamed for that. The more I read into that whole kind of array of things, it's like one thing contradicts the other. How do you find common ground? And first of all, explain to folks what that is.
Yeah, so alienation of affection and criminal conversation, they're pretty much the same thing. It's a really, I would say, unique, because North Carolina is one of the very few states that still recognize it, but it's when your spouse cheats on you essentially with someone else, you, under North Carolina law, are permitted to sue the paramour or the person that your spouse had an affair with. And it is really interesting that North Carolina still has that. Most states do not have that anymore, but I think North Carolina is really focused on upholding marriages, and they really value marriages. Mm-hmm. And that is something that they keep implemented.
And I think that's the thing that struck me as I looked at that. I forgot how many states said that they just done away with that law, particularly. But the importance is, when I look at it from a legal point of view and a marriage-related domestic case, most folks look at that from a religious point of view, that there's a document. You've decided to marry this person, and you have a legal document, and ready for this, and the preacher signed off on it. So where's the boundaries between that person that says, well, look, here's my legal, and I deserve half of this. Does that hold up in court in North Carolina?
So North Carolina is a no-fault divorce state. So many times people want to blame their husband or blame their wife for the marriage ending. But at the end of the day, North Carolina is no fault divorce, and they are not going to place fault on any one party when it comes to granting a divorce. There are certain conduct that will be considered when it comes to maybe alimony. For example, if you're the supporting spouse and you have an affair, you're going to be required to pay alimony to your spouse. But if the spouse who would be getting paid alimony, so if you're dependent on your spouse and you cheat, then you don't get alimony whatsoever. So actions like that do come into play in other areas such as alimony, and there may be arguments for it anywhere. I feel like attorneys can kind of come up with a unique argument for anything, but there could be arguments of marital misconduct when it comes to equitable distribution, and especially alimony when it comes to having an affair. But a divorce itself is always going to be no fault in North Carolina. They're not going to place blame on any one party.
And there's another question I pulled up when I was looking up information in that area, was folks that live together for an extended period of time. The assumption of a marriage is there without a legal document. Is that real? Is there, if you choose to say cohabitate and you're there for 5 years or ever how many years, but a lengthy period of time, does that automatically constitute a marriage?
So that is a common law marriage, and it does not here, to my understanding. I think that is still a thing in South Carolina. I may need to be checked on that, but yeah, that is a common law marriage, and it's a really interesting concept, but I don't think North Carolina recognizes that anymore.
But you have that out in society, and people have that in their mind, and until they sit down and talk with you, it's still fantasy land. And I think that's the important thing. And the reason I'm going in that direction is there's a timetable when folks see something, whether it's on AI or whether they pick it up from a friend. There's a timetable they need as soon as possible, like they would their medical doctor. They need to get to their counselor and say, here's what I'm hearing. Is this person telling me the truth?
Yes. So that is a misconception. If you're not married, then you are entitled to equitable distribution or alimony. You still have those rights there if you have children together for custody and support. But when it comes to dividing your assets, equitable distribution or alimony, which is spousal support, if you're not married, you don't get those things. And your only claim then is for, if you have children, custody and child support. And I think that's maybe a misconception that people have, that if I live with this person for 20 years, we've shared our lives together, we have children together, you're still not entitled to alimony or equitable distribution because you're not married.
Yeah. And they don't know that they have that in their mind, and it continues to grow. And until they sit down with you or some other attorney and they get the facts, then all of a sudden it's like they're in shock.
Yeah. Yeah,
that always amazes me. The property piece, I want to kind of get into that a bit. Families with property, families that decides to distribute property. what do you recommend? We talked about estate planning. I know that's not one of your specialty areas. Do you recommend folks to, as soon as possible, I mean, you don't need to wait till you're an old person. You can do this early on to set certain parameters. If you have, if you look at liquidity of whatever it is you have, it might be a business, it might be cars, it might be whatever, but how early is that something somebody needs to sit down early on and not only maintain, but have an updated registered document?
Yeah, I would say before the marriage. I often advocate for prenups, and I think that prenups have this bad connotation, but at the end of the day, prenups are something that tells you we're not planning for it to end, but in the event that it does, because life is unpredictable and things happen. Life hits you hard. It can be something that isn't terrible that happened, but you've decided to just separate. And now, if you don't have a prenup, the state's going to tell you how you're going to separate those things. Whereas if you would have protected yourself to begin with, you have a prenup, which kind of can lay out how you will divide things in the event of a divorce. I don't think that prenups deserve that bad reputation that they get. I think they just plan and protect you in the event that you do get a divorce.
Would that be something that if somebody come in, say a couple come in, would that be something you would advise them to consider doing? I mean, obviously they're coming from two different places. The one person may have this, the other person may have something else, and one may not have land, but they might own businesses. I mean, all of these things come to mind. Is that something you would recommend up front and say, look, we know you're in this, wonderful world of love and all this kind of thing, but how do you get them to see clear issues on the factuality of life?
Yeah, I certainly don't push it too much, but I do, if someone were to ask me that, I would bring up the importance of protecting what you have. And I'm not trying to insinuate that, your partner that you're about to marry is going to take everything if you guys divorce, but it is just a way to protect yourself. As I mentioned, life is so unpredictable and things do happen. People marry someone and eventually divorce someone that they thought they would spend the rest of their life with. And now they're stuck with the state telling them how they're going to divide their business that they've worked so hard on and how they're going to divide all these things that they've put a life's work into. And now they have to just listen to what the state says, and everything may be divided 50-50. You may owe your ex something when at the beginning of all of this, before you ever got married, you could have just laid out some fair terms in the event that you do divorce. Which
normally you would do to anything else, but because of the emotional connectivity there, I think people don't feel like they really can get into that, or they feel like if they do, then that's saying, well, you must not really care.
Yeah, I often hear that it's clear. I'm not going to plan for it to end. And I'm like, I don't think it's planning for it to end. Obviously, I respect what everyone wants to do. And if people view it that way, that's totally fine. But I think my perspective is that you're not planning for it to end. It's just in case it does, this is how we should separate everything.
When I look at that, the other part, and I want to talk about some of these things when we come back from this break, but the other part is a generational issue too. What, for example, in my generation as a boomer, we see things one way, and obviously, Gen Z and so forth sees things another way. And I think where we are with the law now, we look at, all of us look at that as the standard bearer for what we really need to be doing. So when we come back from break, I want to touch on that. And also I want to touch on a bit more about understanding equitable distribution, because that is critically important. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with an attorney, the newest attorney in Clinton, Ashlyn Milligan. Be back in a moment.
At Fisher's, it's not just about fashion. It's about exceptional service. Experience top-notch customer care and find your perfect look. Visit Fisher's today and feel the difference. Looking to refresh your home? At Clinton Appliance and Furniture, we've got everything you need to create the perfect space. We're here to help make your house a home with stylish furniture, appliances, flooring, design services, delivery, and repair. Visit ClintonAppliance.com to explore our selection, or visit us at 401 Northeast Boulevard in Clinton. Shop local. Shop smart. Shop Clinton Appliance and Furniture.
At the Reedy Mark, we take pride in a unique, distinguished customer experience. We specialize in handcrafted cocktails, allocated bourbons, as well as gourmet signature food items exclusive to our menu at the Reedy Mark in Roseboro.
The average American household has 17 devices connected to the internet. With more and more devices able to get online, you may need to increase your internet speed. Call Star Communications today and let us help you select the package that's right for you.
This segment of We Should Know is brought to you by the Sampson Independent.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Last segment of the show today, We Should Know, is on the air. And as you know, I'm J.W. Simmons, your host. And I appreciate all those folks that see me out through the landscape of this area and this part of the state. And they ask me questions. And you continue to pose questions to me. Why didn't I ask this or that? Keep asking those questions. That tells me you're looking. We're talking today with an attorney, the newest attorney in Clinton, Ashlyn Milligan. Ashlyn, again, thank you for being with us. I want to talk a bit about forfeitures and those kinds of things. But before I do that, I want to read something that supposedly that you wrote that I thought was very interesting. And it really gets to the root, as you say here, and it's the belief that every family deserves to feel supported and heard, and you're committed to offering personalized, empathetic representation tailored to each client's unique situation. I highlighted that. I thought that is right. That's exactly where anybody's listening or watching the show. I can't imagine they could ask any more from you.
Yes. So that perfectly describes what I aim to do and how I aim to be when it comes to my clients. I believe that everyone deserves to be heard and to have a voice, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter what your background is, no matter who you are. I believe that you should have a voice, especially when it comes to fundamental decisions in your life. And that's something I work with, whether it's divorce, custody. Those are things that change your life and can change your life forever. And I believe that people should have a voice. Like I said, it doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, you should have a voice in what happens in your life. And I'm committed to being that voice for people who need someone to just step in and advocate for their rights, for their legal rights and their well-being.
There's a part of what you do as an attorney and your associates as attorneys is you're dealing with people oftentimes that again, I switch to another profession, is say, for example, doctors. They deal with people that they can look at and know that their life is in jeopardy. Their existence on this planet is. And I see that and I think about people like you that's new that still decides to step into that storm. And you've decided to step into that storm. If we have a conversation 6 months or a year or 5 years from now, again, how strong do you feel that you're still going to be committed to that?
I feel super strongly about that. I think anyone who I have ever represented or who I've consulted with can tell you that I genuinely care. I understand these are not my kids. This is not my divorce, but I genuinely care about the outcome of each client that I have. I get to know them. I try to gain their trust, and I support them in any way that I can under the attorney-client relationship. But I genuinely care about my clients, and I want to see the best possible outcome for them. And that's something that I am committed to now, 5 years from now, 25 years from now, something that I'm committed to advocating for. And it's important to me that they get the best possible outcome. These are human beings, and I think they deserve to be advocated for, kind of like I said. And it's something that I care deeply about.
If you think of this for a moment, and I'll let you just process just for a second as I'm talking, you're sitting here and you could look now and talk to folks like Ashlyn Milligan when they were at high school in Clinton, or maybe they were in middle school. What would you say to those kids today when they see you and go, well, I knew her. She was a ball player and she's a what? She's an attorney. What would you say to them that they could do? I mean, because I think what children I see and hear a lot of folks that we talk to that deals with adolescent behavior, they don't feel like they have an opportunity. But look, you're sitting here, you're an attorney. Yeah, you've passed a bar. You've got an office. You've already had your first case. So speak to those kids for me.
Yeah, I would tell those kids that, and it's pretty cliche, but you can do anything that you set your mind to. And if there's hurdles or things you think are stopping you, there are resources out there. And I would also encourage them to reach out to me, and I can be a resource for them and kind of guide them to maybe what they need to do. I actually went to UNCW and spoke on campus this week, and I talked to college students, and they asked for guidance on how to get to the position that I'm in. And I think that being able to mentor other people the way that others have mentored me along my way is something that I would be definitely interested in, and I would encourage anyone to reach out to me.
Next question. If folks are watching this show that are counselors in our school system, and not just Sampson, because we cover a pretty big area here with your picture and your conversation on it, would you feel comfortable if teachers or counselors or superintendent of schools or a principal calls and says, would you speak to our 10th grade class, or would you speak to our aspiring seniors? Is that something you're open in doing? And I know you've got time to think about that, but at the same time, I just want to get out there that if you're willing to do that, that would be huge, because you are part of this community.
Yeah, I would definitely be willing to do that. I think it's something that I've found myself stepping into newly. Speaking at UNCW was a new thing for me, but seeing that these people are genuinely interested in like my path and my journey and my career and how I got here it's great to see. And like I said, I've always had mentors. I'm 24 years old, so I have mentors who are older than me at different ages, and me being able to be a mentor and to give back, especially to people in Sampson County and the surrounding counties, would be incredible and a really fulfilling thing.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here smiling because I'm thinking, as you're talking and you said 24 years old, I'm thinking, I could be sitting here talking to my grandchildren, that's where we've got to understand. I mean, folks in my age genre and younger, and folks that are where you are, you can reach those people on a level that I could never reach them on, and other people can't. So I think you have just offered up an opportunity, and I hope folks listening and watching this show will pick up on this, an opportunity for folks to hear from somebody that's still in their wavelength. And by that, I think they understand that they're kind of thinking within that same genre of movement and understand what their feelings are.
Yeah, it definitely offers a new perspective and a younger generation perspective to clients. And with the changes in our world, the court systems are also changing the way they view certain things. Yeah. And I think we're able to, not that older attorneys can't see it from that perspective, but offering my perspective from someone coming from the same generation as some of these people is really valuable. And
well, it's critical that you'll do that, because I think the important thing in you doing that is that the reality of some of the things we talked about earlier. And one of the segments we were talking a bit about the communication thing. And there's now the language, because some of the kids now, some of the words and stuff they're using, they're creating words.
Yeah.
And so you're much closer to that than I would be.
Yeah, I definitely get the TikTok references and stuff.
Exactly. And that's the way they deal with things. And if you don't pick up on that, then you could lose them.
Yeah, I agree. I've had mentors who are a bit older than me, and someone would be like, my kid does this. And I'm like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah,
and the attorney's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. And you think it's something horrific, and it's not. Yeah. Or vice versa. So the other thing I want to touch on too, and then we'll kind of go wherever you want to, but is this whole equitable distribution thing. That always comes up and say, what does that mean? We've got issues going on, and we're going, what does equitable mean as it relates to stuff? And is that a huge, well, it's labeled as a huge part. Is that critical, or is that something as part of the planning part?
Yeah, it's definitely important, because it divides things that you acquired during your marriage. So imagine you're married for 50 years and you get a divorce. You've acquired a substantial amount of things with your spouse, and those things are subject to division. And it doesn't necessarily mean equal 50-50. Like, we're not going to cut the car in half and give you one half of the car and give someone the other half of the car. But it means just comparing what you have and coming to a resolution that is fair for both sides.
Based on value, maybe.
Based on value, and based on a lot of other factors you can kind of throw at it. You can throw different things like, well, he makes more money than I do. Well, he has more, stuff like that. And you can kind of negotiate around that. And yeah, it's all about just dividing things you acquired during the marriage. But I think that's something that I brought up a little bit earlier about the prenup can kind of plan for that. But I know there also are unforeseen circumstances, like maybe someone hits the lottery one day and you didn't really plan for that in your prenup, and you can always modify it afterwards. But
yeah, and I get that a lot, and it's questions come up in estate planning, where folks say, well, I'll take this or you do that, and they don't involve legal counsel, and all of a sudden 10 years later they go, God, I wish I hadn't done that. Yeah. And they do it out of emotion rather than factual reality.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I think people's emotions get really into this. And I know I mentioned earlier that I genuinely care about my clients and I want the best outcome for them. But part of being an attorney and being a counselor is to remain objective when I am giving advice, and to listen to the client's feelings, but to also be like, listen, I understand where you're coming from, but this is the law and this is how things are going to go. And I think maintaining that good balance between being empathetic, but also counseling individuals on the law and setting expectations where they should be for each client. And it may be unique in every situation, but that's a super important job of being a counselor at law. I think you have to find that balance and find a good balance.
So back to just circle back very, very quickly here. So basically you are into not only counseling individually clients, but you're also willing to step up in a larger scale and speak to people about things they need to consider and the importance of their future life and the importance of what they're doing now and how decisions they make, although they may be 15, 16, 17, or 18, has a huge impact on where they are when they're 25, 30, or 40.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think you kind of mentioned something that I wanted to touch on about your teenage years. It goes back and people are like, oh, it doesn't matter, I was a teenager. But I will say the bar application is very in-depth and they look into absolutely everything. So I definitely encourage younger kids to, watch what you're doing, especially social media and your actions when you're younger, because some of that stuff can really prohibit or limit things you can do in your professional career growing up. And I know they hear it all the time probably, but it's always important to remember that.
And I think it's so important that you're willing to talk about that from your perspective at the age you are now, to folks that maybe is 5 years, younger or what have you. Is that one scar, as depending on what career you choose, could be a disadvantage and prevent you from going any further? That one blemish.
It could certainly limit you. I wouldn't say it completely prevents you, but it's always important to think about your future when you're younger. Everyone, I'm sure, can resonate with saying, well, I probably was younger and I made some really stupid decisions. And I know that I did as well, but I don't think it prohibited me, but it was something that once the time for the bar application and I was applying for the bar, I was like, oh, I did this, and maybe I was overthinking it stuff. Like I never got into any type of that trouble, but
sure.
You always think about it. And especially when you're entering a very professional world, you want to think about things that you did when you're younger and to keep that in mind when you are younger. I have younger nieces and nephews and I try to tell them to, act right, because you never know where you want to go with life. You don't really know until later on. So I think it's super important to consider that.
Well, okay, we got about 45 seconds here. I'm going to give you the last word on anything you want to touch on.
I don't know. I just want to tell people that I'm excited to be back in my hometown and to be able to provide legal services for residents of Sampson County and the surrounding counties. And I really look forward to, gaining other clients' trust and providing for my hometown. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not met her, this is Ashlyn Milligan, and she is from Clinton, graduated Clinton High School, a practicing attorney in Clinton at 112 Lisbon Street is her office. She's entertaining clients as we speak. We look forward to seeing you again here on We Should Know, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.